Another day, another video talking about win totals in 2024. The good folks over at FanDuel decided to give us content for days by releasing their preseason odds for every major power conference. To which I say, FanDuel, what are you doing, man? Come on, sponsor us over here. We talk college football betting lines all the time. You know you want to be a part of this action, but we've already discussed the Big Ten. We've already discussed the SEC. What about the ACC? This might be the most intriguing conference in college football, much like the Pac-12 was last year. How do things pan out, and what are the biggest storylines going into next season? But before we break all that down, if you are new here, welcome on into the channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode of just saying it. Go ahead and hit the comment section. Tell me which betting line is your favorite going into next season. Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of pros, college football aficionados, ACC faithful, everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport. Go ahead and follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you see fit. But that way, we can continue to talk about college football every single day of the offseason. So, win totals. ACC, little different than the other conferences. Nobody's over 9.5. Nobody is over 9.5, which to me says there is not a lot of drop off when you look at the top teams to the middle tier teams. This is a wide open conference where, yes, even a newcomer could make major waves going into next season. Let's start off with the big daddy of them all, Clemson. Until further notice, Dabo Swinney still belongs in every conversation of top 10 coaches because he is basically just the standard of college football, the old standard, but still counts. Until you really see a significant drop off, he belongs in the conversation. Clemson did things their way, and it worked for a very long time. They won 2 national titles. They were always in the hunt for the college football playoff, and they've always been a threat to win the ACC. Even in the year that they had DJU starting at quarterback, they ran through the table and got to 10 victories and an Orange Bowl appearance. Like, that's Clemson. But times are changing in college football, and that's why the line is at 9.5 instead of at 10.5, because you did not do anything in the transfer portal, and you're not doing anything in the transfer portal. Yes, we're hearing that Dabo wants to be more aggressive in adding in players. They're actually going out of their way to hand out scholarships, give opportunities. It's just like when you show your work on a test and you still get the wrong answer. Cool, you did your job, but the results still didn't pave the way. So this is a roster that is returning over half of the production offensively and their offensive coordinator in Garrett Riley, which gives me a lot of hope. If I am a bettor and a believer in Cade Klubnik, I'm excited to see what he can do in year 2 of this offense, kind of like we saw the growth and development of a guy like Jackson Dart in Lane Kiffin's offense underneath Charlie Weiss Jr. Maybe that's the same way. But the defense was the backbone last season to a 9-win record, and they're losing over 55% of it, including your star cornerback in Nate Wiggins and your middle linebacker in Jeremiah Trotter. I like this team. I think that they could absolutely find a way to still win the ACC. When you look at their schedule, they really only have 2 major tests. The Virginia Tech game in Blacksburg is very much a trap game. And then, of course, you have the DJU Bowl, which is going to be fun. But I do think that if you are a betting man, just knowing what we've seen over the last few years, be cautiously optimistic with Clemson. They easily could go ahead and find a way to 10 wins. It would not shock me in the slightest because Dabo is still Dabo. But they also could be 7-5, 8-4, and that really wouldn't shock me that much either. Florida State, 9.5. They're basically saying right now, hey, the transfer portal thing has been working really well for Mike Norvell. He's gone out and he's added in a decent recruiting class the last 2 years. We still have high hopes. Now, how those hopes work is by replacing the production that was lost. Guys like Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, Jordan Travis, especially. When you look defensively, Fentrell Cypress, you got to replace Jared Verse. They added some names. They did. They brought in some really quality names via the portal, and they did have a decent recruiting class. They have games against Florida. They have games against Miami. They have a schedule that really isn't playing in their favor at times, but they do have 2 critical bye weeks before marquee matchups, which could give them a little bit of breathing room. The way that I think Vegas is saying this is they believe that DJU can stabilize this roster. What was brought in over the last few years, what has been added to this team, basically through the recruiting trail and somewhat on the transfer portal, they're buying stock that DJU can just be an enforcer, game manager somewhat. Game managers aren't a problem. Brock Purdy's a game manager. Patrick Mahomes is a game manager. They got their team and managed their way to get to a Super Bowl. So I think if you can do the exact same thing with DJU, the Clemson game especially, you find a way to get that win, you're coasting all the way through. This is a team that I think has all the upside. They're a team that I think still has the right people at the helm. You didn't lose any of your coaching staff, which is, in my opinion, a really underlying factor that does not get brought up enough. Florida State, still in my opinion, a really strong team going into next year. Would not be shocked to see them make it to Charlotte. A team 100% I'm buying stock in is Miami. I have said on this program multiple times over the last, 3 months or so that this was my team for the Texas breakout. And I stand by that. I really do. I know that I'm going to be a little far-fetched when it comes to Cam Ward, but to me, that was the number one quarterback in the transfer portal. Does he have some fumble issues? Yeah, he does. We can all admit that. Does he also have a cannon of an arm that makes Uncle Rico's arm look like a noodle? Yes, he does. And more importantly, they still have weapons. They still have an offensive line. Francisco Minota, the guy who the offensive tackle from last year, he was a staple of the trenches. Now you're adding him back for another year underneath Mario Cristobal, who understands what the culture is in Coral Gables. There was a reason why he left Eugene. It was home. That's a place where he wanted to see his program, a place that he loved and a place that he admired throughout his entire time growing up in the state of Florida. He wants to see it back to national relevancy. And they were a play away from last year going 8-4, which would be just like Texas. I make the Texas comparison because I see similar results. Number one, you have a foundation year. Number two, you start building off of that winning mentality. If you take a knee, just take a damn knee against Georgia Tech. What are you doing, Shannon Dawson? Take a freaking knee. You're 8-4, which would have been 8-5 because of the bowl game. And look at that. You would have been the exact same record as Texas in 2022. Now you bring in a few more transfers. Now you get a quarterback that you think is going to elevate your team. He fits what Shannon Dawson wants to run. I'm excited for Miami. I do believe that they are going to be a threat in the ACC, and I think that they're going to be a national contender. I would be at least cautious right now. I want to see who else maybe is added or leaves Coral Gables after spring football. But if I'm a betting man, I think that you're looking at a Miami team that's probably going to be hell-bent on going to Charlotte for the first time underneath Cristobal. Next up, SMU, the newcomers to the conference. 7.5 games. You look at their schedule. Do you feel like there's a trap moment? Do you? Because I look at this team. I look at what they're bringing back. More importantly, I see what they have with a coach in Rhett Lashley who didn't leave anytime soon. You feel pretty confident right now. Out of conference schedule, games against Houston Christian, TCU, BYU, all winnable games. You close out the year with games against Pitt, Boston College, Virginia, Cal, all winnable games. Really, there's only 2 matchups that come to mind. September 28th against Florida State at home. That's a little bit of a trap. Then October 5th, back-to-back weekends, you go to Louisville. Besides that, this is a team that I think can go 9-3. Preston Stone's back at starting quarterback. They just ran through the AAC, and they have the NIL funds, people. One team that is going to benefit the most when it comes to NIL and no regulation is SMU because they're a private institution. They can do whatever they want as long as the grades match up to the standard. And I can tell you this much. You ever have a conversation down in the Big D, you will find people who love SMU football. They want the Mustangs to get back to what they were when it was the Pony Express era. They want 1980s version of Dallas football alive and well, and now they have the funds to do it, and they're in a conference that is actually relevant. It's not the AAC. They were no longer an afterthought when you saw Houston and you saw UCF and you saw Cincinnati go to the Big 12. They now join a conference right on that same level. And I think SMU is going to be one of the more profitable teams in this conference. Maybe not in year one, they make it to the college football playoff, but I'm not going to be shocked to watch the Mustangs actually pony their way to 9 wins. I would immediately be hammering this line. Next up, NC State. They are what I call the Dennis Green team. They are who we thought they were. Because what's the one thing that we know about Dave Duran? 8 wins. You're going to get 8 wins. Some years you'll get 7-5. Some years you'll get 9-3. Once in a blue moon, you'll get 10-2. But this is a team that's always going to find a way to 8 wins. They are a cockroach. They live through everything out there, and they come out the other side with the same expectations. Dave Duran's doing it again. Decent recruiting class, decent transfer portal class. You bring over a veteran quarterback in Grayson McCall to stabilize this roster. You still have, in my opinion, one of the most underappreciated wide receivers in college football in capacity. Sorry about that. In Kevin Compassion, you still have a good running back in Jordan Waters. Defensively, yeah, you have to replace Peyton Wilson, but I like some of the names that were brought in this offseason. And Robert and I's offense, I think, really is going to cater more so to Grayson McCall than a guy like, I think, MJ Morris. So you kind of upgrade at quarterback at the same time. Schedule-wise, you feel pretty confident. You have a few games that maybe you're not going to be completely shocked about if you lose. Clemson in week 4, Tennessee in week 2. That's going to be a big matchup. I think the Duke game is going to be really interesting. North Carolina to close out the year. 8-5. I would bet this line. I think that you're looking at a team that probably is not getting enough conversations for being a national championship. I mean, a college football playoff contender. Maybe not a national championship one, but I definitely think that when you look at this roster, they certainly are on the come up. And I think a team that definitely is going to be at least fighting for a spot in Charlotte. Next up, Virginia Tech, 7-5. This is the team that I am very excited to see next year. Brent Pry turned this defense around in the second half of the season. They went 5-2 down the stretch. They made it to a bowl game this past year, and there really wasn't a lot of expectations. They have a quarterback, in my opinion, in Kyron Jones, the former Baylor commit. Kid can play. Kid's got an arm. Kid's got physicality. Kid can run in open space. Kid is a human highlight reel, athletic machine. You got that dude. And you also return the most production in college football. According to ESPN's Bill Conley, this is the number one team in returning production. So imagine that you're just building off of that 5-2 finish last year. And now you got games going ahead to where you feel very confident. I look at Virginia Tech. Where really is that one game that makes you feel like you are going to take a step back? Honestly, because I don't see it this year. I think that they're competitive in every matchup. That game against Clemson and Blacksburg, night game, you know that you're going to hear the sounds of Sandman as you enter the stadium. Going to be a pretty cool moment. I think that Virginia Tech might be that team that we're talking about, making that jump like Louisville did last year, simply because of what they're returning. They didn't add much when it comes to the transfer portal. They also didn't really have to. And if Brent Pry is as good as a coordinator as he is a head coach, strike that, reverse it. As good as a head coach as he is a coordinator, this is a team that probably is going to be at least somewhat inside the top 25 next year. Don't think that they make it to Charlotte, but they are going to stop a few teams from getting to Charlotte in the process. Two more for you. Louisville, 8.5. Jeff Brom doubled down and said, let's go to the transfer portal. And then let's go steal players from the transfer portal that have already committed to other schools like Ole Miss, because that's exactly what he did by getting to Marion McDonald and also Tyler Baring. So when you look right now, they're only getting better when it comes to the transfer portal names. Brought in a number one wide receiver from Alabama. They also brought in a new quarterback in Tyler Shuck from Texas Tech. Here's the thing with Shuck. When he's on the field, he's really good. When he's not on the field, it's because he's hurt. And he's hurt usually more often than not. You get a healthy season of him, there is a lot of potential for him to have a great year. Really a great year. And your schedule still plays well in your favor. 8.5 wins with all these transfers, so long as there is continuity. That's all you're asking for. Just simply one mind, one sound, one roster. You have that, you're in a really good spot. Last but not least, I'm going with Cal. Cal at 6.5. This is a big year for Justin Wilcox because now things are changing. You're no longer in the Pac-12. You feel like that maybe you match up really well with several of these teams. Maybe a Duke, maybe a Syracuse, maybe we talk about a Stanford. And all those teams potentially on your schedule for the next few years. Auburn in week 2, Florida State in week 4, Miami in week 5, Pitt in week 6. You got the game against NC State. Oregon State's still on your schedule, but you close out the year with Wake Forest, Syracuse, SMU, and Stanford. You could win all those games. And I'm really excited to see what you get in Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. He wasn't a finished product last year, but in the games that he did impress, there is a lot of intrigue. This is probably one of the more intriguing quarterbacks that I'm looking forward to see in 2024. I think that Cal could be a team that gets to 8-4. They return enough production defensively to where you feel like you can build off that. And they added in a few pieces from the Pac-12, guys from Utah, guys from Washington State, guys from Oregon, who all are going to be wide receivers and running backs in the backfield. This is the team that I think probably is flirting with that 7-win total. And 7 wins might have to be the record if you want to stay employed if you're Justin Wilcox. But there you have it. Those are my best lines going into 2024 for the ACC. Who walks away the winner of it all? Comment below. Tell me your thoughts on what's the best line. Who do you think has the best shot of making it to the college football playoff as a representative? Continue to follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson, Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook. Slide in the DMs. I'll do a video if you send me one or a question because I love talking college football every single day. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, the ring notification. That way you keep up with everything we're doing on this channel. Until next time, I'm Cole Thompson. Later, folks.